Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
I don't want to sit here with my home.
I think we want to mute ourselves before the meeting begins. Hello, everybody. Welcome to CB2's Land Use Committee meeting. My name is Frederica Siegel. I'm chair of the committee. The committee members are Anita Brandt, Katie Bordenaro, John Paul DeVerna, Doris Diether, David Gruber, Michael Levine, Donna Raftery, Sandy Russo, Sean Sweeney, and Susan Wittenberg. This is a public hearing to gather the comments for CB2's response to the DCP's draft scope of work for the SoHo NoHo Neighborhood Plan. As you can see, the meeting is also being live streamed on CB2's Facebook page. Last week's meeting, sponsored by DCP, was an opportunity for the public to speak in general about the proposed project. Tonight is a little bit different. Tonight we're asking for specific comments on the draft scope. First, I'd like to understand how many people would like to speak. So please raise your hand if you intend to speak, and please leave it raised. Okay. When you're called on, please introduce yourself and tell us which area of the scope and more or less what section or page that you would like to address. We're going to start with every speaker having 2 minutes. And when we get to 8:30 and see where we're at, then we'll revise and perhaps we'll have to go down to 1 minute. Please keep in mind that there is bound to be repetition, and if somebody's stolen your thunder and spoken to the subject that you're interested in, please consider not speaking. To start the meeting, I'd like to introduce Carter Booth, the chair of CB2. Oh, and one thing, remember to unmute yourself, please, before you speak.
Thanks, Frederica. I'm going to leave the public testimony. Oops. I'm going to leave the public testimony protocol up on the screen for the moment. Just wanted to start. We're meeting here via Zoom as a result of Governor Cuomo's Executive Order 202.1. The original order suspended, it's been renewed a number of times. The original order suspended Article 7 of the Public Officers Law in order to permit public bodies to meet remotely by conference call or similar service, provided that the public has the ability to view or listen to such proceeding and that such meetings are recorded and later transcribed. In this case, we're actually allowing public testimony and we're interacting with the public, which is beyond what the executive order allows for. The reason I bring this up is that we're going through this process during a state of emergency and during a pandemic. I had made this point last week, also during the Department of City Planning's public testimony, just to remind people of how much of a challenge it is going through a scoping and a rezoning. I represented Community Board 2 during the Envision SoHo NoHo process on the advisory group, along with a number of other neighborhood groups in which we discussed a number of different areas, and that culminated in the Envision SoHo NoHo report, which is available on Department of City Planning's website. We'll put up a link to those pages shortly. But that's where we are. We're in the middle of a pandemic and we're discussing rezoning an area that's suffered tremendous upheaval in the three core areas there, in retail, in residential, and in commercial office use, and the other uses that exist in the area. So this is a very challenging time, and the decisions that are being made through this, and particularly during the scope, our comments on the scope will indicate where, hopefully inform the city on the areas that they need to expand on in their during the scope. So with that, we'll get started. Frederica, I'll turn it back to you.
Sure, thank you, Carter. I'm just going to call on people in the order that they pop up on my screen. Spencer Heckwolf, please unmute yourself. You have 2 minutes. Spencer Heckwolf.
Oh, there it is. All right, it took a while for the unmute button to come up.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to comment and say I am in favor of the rezoning if it includes much more residential than commercial. I don't want the commercial to crowd out the residential. So we should be going for as much residential as possible, especially with MIH, to get as many affordable units as possible. And I would like to see the area in Speaker Johnson's district put back in the plan. It seems like it was taken out at his asking, and I don't think he should have special favors. So I think we should put that back in. So that's my comment. Thanks.
Okay, great. All right, now I'm only seeing the timer and not the people here. Here we go. Casey Berkowitz, please unmute yourself. Casey Berkowitz.
Hi there. Just like Spencer, took me a second to unmute. I'd like to first of all say, hi, my name is Casey Berkowitz. I'm a resident of CB2. I live in Chelsea. And I actually recently moved to Chelsea because I'm fortunate fortunate enough, even in COVID, to be still gainfully employed and have was raised in a middle-class household that allowed me to get an excellent education and a pretty decent middle-class job. Not everybody has that in their life. Not everybody's fortunate enough or has a greater debt burden than I do. And frankly, CB2 has not been pulling its weight in providing opportunities for people who do not have the fortunate circumstances that I do to have the same opportunities that I do. So I'd like to see in particular SoHo NoHo, but also other areas in CB2 down the line, rezone to accommodate more affordable housing. Like Spencer, I would like in particular to see, regarding the draft scope of work, would like to see the residential FAR raised and the commercial FAR lowered. I am not going to fool myself into thinking, frankly, that the members of this committee are fully on board with the maximum residential FAR, but I hope at least that you'll hear this constituent's plea to advocate to lower the commercial FAR, which I'm sure many others have already and are going to advocate tonight and further along the line in the rezoning process. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Next up is Andrew Berman.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thanks. I'm Andrew Berman from Village Preservation. A couple of points. One is, there's a really stunning lack of analysis of the sweeping impacts of the proposed plan. Basic issues like how many certified artists live here, how many rent stabilized or loft law units are located here, how many residents with average or below average incomes live here haven't been answered. The city would have us believe that no one but rich people live here and that there are no potential displacement issues. That is not the case. We know from the city's own report, they say, quote, this neighborhood has roughly 40% home ownership and that almost half of the rental units are priced below $2,000 a month. This means that if there are 8,000 SoHo NoHo residents, that 60% are renters, or 4,800 people. Of that 4,800 people, more than half of them have rent for under $2,000 a month. Under $2,000 a month rent qualifies under the MIH program as affordable housing. And a lot of this housing is located in exactly the areas where the city wants to upzone to 10 or 12 FAR and will, there's a good chance, result in the demolition of that existing affordable housing in the neighborhood. There's been no analysis of this whatsoever. I also want to point out, with the allowance for the destination big box retail, that not only, that isn't just going to fill up empty spaces, that's going to push out existing small businesses that are located in the neighborhood. Again, there's been no analysis of that. So I would urge the community board to ask the city to do an analysis of residents who are going to be pushed out, small businesses who are going to be pushed out by this. Last thing I just want to say is that the streets of SoHo before COVID were almost impassable given how crowded they were, with a massive upzoning with additional offices, hotels, residents, and destination retail. Where exactly do they think all of these people are going to fit?
Okay, thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Next up is Samir. I want to say Samir Lavinga.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Yeah, it's Samir Lavingia. Thank you for trying, though. I appreciate it. Hi, my name is Samir Lavingia. I live in CB2. I'm mostly going to be talking about my experiences working with the equity working group in CB2 that I've been going to a few of their meetings over the last few months since they started. During the height of the George Floyd protests, CB2 unanimously passed a resolution to, and I quote, commit our collective efforts to fostering diverse and inclusive neighborhoods by proactively implementing anti-racist policy. The entire community board signed on to this resolution to be anti-racist, and I would say that this is your chance. The best way to make our area more diverse, inclusive, and give Black and brown people of color more opportunity is to integrate our neighborhoods. SoHo is over 75% white and less than 1% Black in a city that has over 26% of our Black people. SoHo is incredibly segregated, and it's time to fix that. Due to systemic racism in our government, Black people and race and class, specifically Black people, are very closely coupled. And so by bringing lower income people into our neighborhood by affordable housing, we will be able to tackle the segregation problem as well. We should be able to structure this rezoning in a way to get as much affordable housing as possible. We shouldn't be focusing on office space. And so whatever we can do to push the DCP to push for as much residential as possible is what I would personally support. At the end of the day, we need as much affordable housing units as possible, not office space or big box retail as someone else mentioned. And that if we are able to get, let's say 800 units, that is 800 more affordable units, capital A affordable units, not lowercase a, in order to integrate our neighborhoods by class and indirectly by race. We can't foster a more diverse and inclusive neighborhood without adding as much affordable housing as possible. This is the only plan I've seen with a real path to add affordable housing, and we should vote to amend it to push for as much affordable housing as possible in absolute numbers, rather than hand-wringing about the percentage of affordable relative to market rate. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Ankur Dalal.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes? Yes, we can. Ankur? All right, we'll come back to Ankur.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Ankur.
Hi, thank you. Sorry about the technical problem. I'm speaking today to voice my support of the SoHo NoHo rezoning and the city's effort to create significant new affordable housing in the neighborhood. And I would encourage this community board to speak in favor of more affordable housing. My specific comments are, I believe the pages in the report are 16 to 25, which talk about the allocation of commercial versus residential upzoning. And like other folks have commented on before, I would strongly encourage the community board to speak in favor of more significant residential upzoning and less significant commercial upzoning. So I would recommend that this community board push for a max FAR of 5 for commercial spaces, and to push to increase the residential density in places from to allow for a FAR of 12 wherever possible in the residential zones, and to include as much housing as possible and as much residential zoning as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Calling on Dan Miller. Dan?
It looks like Dan has an older version of Zoom, so we'll need to have him submit his comments in writing.
Okay, then we'll move on to Zella Jones.
Okay, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, Zella, we can.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so first, NoHo Bowery Stakeholders, which is a nonprofit serving NoHo with 350 members, supports affordable housing and zoning that can effectively realize that. We also support measures that would reduce commercial additions in this upzoning. I have submitted a full testimony with absolute language that we have the advantage of Shelley Friedman, our zoning consultant, having put together. So I won't get into the details. I'm going to provide you a really fast summary, and if you have any further questions, that's fine with me. We want the inclusion of retail use on Broadway and Lafayette Street versus side streets. There is a distinction. We want to minimize development of office buildings as a means of reducing MIH development. We want more attention to the age and impediments of adding floors to historic buildings and making more difficult the market rate additions. and MIH credits that would allow affordable elsewhere. We want to consider adaptive reuse as much as it is possible. We want a framework for evaluation and inclusion of the arts and art-related use, including makers. And we want to introduce height modifications within the zonings that have been recommended for areas in proximity to landmark buildings. This has been a precedent with the Tribeca Mixed Use Special District, so we know that that is possible. The specifics are in the document that I have just submitted at hellocb2.org, and
Great.
I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stella. Move to David Lawrence. I see we're up to 155
Hello?
participants, so I just like to remind people if they want to speak, they have to raise their hands.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I don't know the specific page, but my biggest objection to the plan is the massive increase in the FAR amounts. I live in a building, it's a 6-story tall cast iron building on Grand Street. We are almost entirely artists in our building, very diverse, probably 40%, between 35 and 40% of our residents are non-white. We have Asian, we have Black, brown people. And I really resent people that say that SoHo is rich white people. We are almost entirely artists. We're struggling here. And our building looks out on buildings that are 4 and 6 stories tall. The changes in the FAR would allow a residential building with a FAR of 12 to be built across the street, which would obliterate our building. As an artist, I would find it impossible. I'm a photographer. It's impossible for me to work under these situations. I can't say that I would definitely move. I may or may not, but it would definitely cause me not to be able to work here any longer. And hopefully SoHo would, part of what makes SoHo so special is the artists that have lived here forever. We have someone in our building who's been here for 40 years who would certainly be affected by this. The other thing is the congestion that we currently deal with, which is untenable. And I see very little in this plan that deals with the congestion that we face daily here in SoHo. And the plan envisions almost doubling the number of inhabitants in a place that has no public schools and very little public parks. There's Petrosina Square, which is a sliver, and the park over on Thompson Street. And none of these quality of life issues are being dealt with. But the FAR is the crux of the problem.
Okay. Thanks so much. South Village neighbors, what is your issue?
Thank you so much. I'm assuming you can hear me, but if you can, let
Yes,
me
we can. We can.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Mickey McGee, and I'm part of a group of neighbors called South Village Neighbors. We live in West Soho, the South Village. Our group came together when a number of luxury condo developments were going up on 6th Avenue that led to the displacement of multiple families and many elderly people who had been aging in place. We are very, very concerned about what's going to go on in terms of displacement. The neighborhood I live in, which is mostly R17 with a C12 overlay, which is that sliver between 6th Avenue and Soho proper, is largely rent stabilized despite all of the erosion of rent stabilization. And when I say largely, I mean 30%. We've done the numbers. We've looked at the HPD records, and we can see that many, many rent stabilized tenants in this neighborhood would be threatened with displacement. Moreover, many of these residents of our neighborhood are very elderly. We have many, many people aging in place. 40-year residents of the neighborhood are actually newbies on our block. So we're very, very concerned about the displacement issues all the way down to Canal Street, including the sliver that's included in the rezoning. But we're concerned about this across SoHo as well, where, as others have commented, the joint live work quarters for artists have not been properly counted for as affordable housing, nor have the rent stabilized units that will likely be lost as people's apartments turn over when they leave. So thank you. I'm out of time. I appreciate your help and concern for our neighborhood.
Okay, it was Mickey McGee, correct?
That's correct. And you can.
All right.
Off the
Thank
rest.
you very much. Thanks. Brandon Zwagerman?
Hello, my name's Brandon Zwagerman. I'm with the SoHo.
Sorry.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Brandon Zwagerman. I'm with the SoHo Broadway Initiative, the not-for-profit that manages the SoHo, manages the neighborhood-focused business improvement district on Broadway from Houston to Canal. Our organization is also a member of the Envision SoHo NoHo Advisory Group. The SoHo Broadway Initiative supports pursuing the SoHo NoHo Plan's important policy goals of creating more affordable housing and legalizing residential as well as retail uses. Updating these outdated rules will support a more equitable recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic by creating more affordable housing and creating more certainty for those who want to legally live in or operate a business in SoHo. The increase of floor area ratio in the draft scope of work is concerning to many in these neighborhoods. We encourage the city to achieve these important policy goals in ways that do not change the historic character of these important historic neighborhoods. We encourage the Department of City Planning to explore alternative approaches, including ones that rely on lower floor area ratios within historic districts, converting office space to residential, or other approaches to achieve the important goals of bringing more affordable housing into these neighborhoods while also maintaining the one-of-a-kind historic look and feel of these neighborhoods. In completing the environmental impact study for the proposed rezoning, it's important to consider that SoHo is a neighborhood where people live next to both retail and office businesses. Day-to-day operations like garbage collection and deliveries can be challenging to fit into a mixed-use community like SoHo, as these operations frequently require the use of public sidewalk space and can be noisy. City planning should study ways to change the zoning and other public policies to give back the space to the public while helping provide a quiet night for residents. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Okay, thank you, Brandon. Paul Schinkel? Are you there? Paul Schinkel?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Some reason.
Yes, we can.
Let's see.
Would you like to start?
Chat. No.
No, it's not chat.
Just,
Your
Paul,
options.
just start talking.
You should be. Can you hear us? Can you
Yes,
hear?
we can. And we can.
Yes,
So-
we can, she says.
But I can't hear them.
Go ahead and speak.
Yes, I'm a resident of Soho for 50 years. I moved there in 1970, and I loved it. And it was dilapidated. And I'm an artist, and we resuscitated the whole neighborhood. So now what I see is developers coming in and wanting to piggyback on what we have done in the past. I think it's a little bit outrageous. There are many communities in New York City, like Bushwick, Williamsburg, that could be rejuvenated, and perhaps the developers could indeed do their job to resuscitate the neighborhoods, etc. So to build more buildings and to take down the buildings that currently exist is outrageous. And to put in high rises, as we have seen with NYU on Houston Street, it's a disaster. It is very high, and it destroys the quality of the neighborhood. The other thing I want to say is that there are no plans for children who will be going to school. How many? Has this plan made any study of where the children would go to school? If you have 800 new units in there, you're bound to have about 1,600 children going to the schools. Has that been studied? The other issue I want to talk about is that there's no parking. The garages that were there are disappearing 1, 2, 3, as are the service stations, et cetera, et cetera. I think that it is outrageous to want to upzone this and make this a neighborhood that no one will want to go to. So think about that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Douglas Hanow,
Let me see if I can find it. Reset.
you can mute yourself, please, Paul.
I don't know why we're.
Okay. Mr. Hanow? Is he there? Mr. Hanow. All right, I think we'll move on to Pete Davies. Mr. Hanow can raise his hand again.
I'm here.
Oh, all right, then please.
Do you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so my name is Douglas Hanow. I'm a lifelong New Yorker. I was born, raised, grew up in New York. I'm raising my family in New York City. I'm in my 50s. I've been attending these community board meetings for most of my adult life. And I consistently hear this community board supports affordable housing. We love affordable housing, but there's 1,000 million reasons not to do it here. But there's really not. We need to have more affordable housing in New York. We need to have more affordable housing in every community in New York. SoHo, NoHo, the Bronx, Brooklyn, everywhere. Denying affordable housing is a serious, serious problem that communities are doing all over the city. And it's hurting us. And it's hurting poor people. And it's hurting working class people who can't find a place to live in New York City anymore. So if this rezoning is rejected, it's just going to be another opportunity squandered where New York, for reasons of parking, for reasons of contextual buildings, denies the next generation of people to come in. One more issue. A gentleman said there are 2,000 apartments under $2,000 in SoHo NoHo. That doesn't mean poor people live in those apartments. Those apartments are not income restricted apartments. The affordable housing coming in will be. It'll be people who need it, not people who get a cheap rent. And that's a very significant difference. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Joan Melnick, please.
Oh, you called me?
Oh, Pete, I'm sorry. Yes.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Pete Davies, Broadway Residents Coalition. I speak against the plan and for the community alternative plan. The scope is way too limited. The scope only looks at 27 or 84 properties. There are 800 lots in this area that need to be fully looked at. The FAR allowance under MIH would apparently add 11 million new buildable square feet all across SoHo. That is not being taken into consideration. The value of that FAR needs to be studied, a full economic analysis related to the proposed increase in FAR, including the allotted price per square foot applicable to each property lot within the zoning districts, and how the plan will impact transferable development rights needs to be studied and included in the scope. The current time during this pandemic makes it nearly impossible to do the studies necessary on transportation, air quality, greenhouse gas emissions, all which are listed in the scope. Studies for the landmarking of the area, which the scope draft states will be done in consultation with the Landmarks Preservation Commission, have not been done. That needs to be done. I stand for affordable housing, true affordable housing, not MIH, which is a failed plan. It has only served up 2,800 units, I believe, across the city. We need affordable housing that actually serves people rather than developers. And I thank you very much. I have submitted other material. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Calling on Joan Melnick.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi. I'm an artist and I've been a resident in NoHo on Great Jones Street for 50 years. We have watched the neighborhood change from junkies in the hallways to working to develop a neighborhood that has become a rather upscale neighborhood over the last 10 years. I believe I speak for everyone in my building. There are 7 floors that we all agree to the idea of affordable housing. But I think one of our concerns is that this becomes an opening for developers and that affordable housing becomes something else, that it is not meant to be, it will not be what developers want. Unless it's something that's treated in the way that the program over on 42nd Street, way over on the west side, and I believe it's on Greenwich Street down in Tribeca, where the housing was set up based on income. We also believe that we live in a historic designated area, and we certainly don't want that changed. I believe that there's also an incredible amount of property owned by the city that has not been used. And I do not understand to this day why the city, with an outgoing mayor, has not taken advantage of developing affordable housing in city-owned property, rather than going into a vital neighborhood and trying to upend its zoning to accommodate, I believe, developers. That's really, I think everything else has been said.
Very good. Thank you very much then. Calling on Benjamin Darsh and then Laura Tenenbaum.
Hello, I live in the NoHo Historic District. I am totally against the SoHo NoHo upzoning and its so-called MIH plan to support affordable housing as presented in the scoping report. I am not against affordable housing. The question is, affordable for whom? As currently structured, the scoping report MIH plan provides developers with an incentive to wring concessions and tax breaks from the city in exchange for so-called affordable housing to achieve their profit targets. Developers will only consider affordable housing units, quote unquote, if they receive sufficient tax incentives, height or FAR variances or other subsidies. Housing for lower middle income owners is not feasible in the increasingly high-end luxury condominium SoHo NoHo gentrifying neighborhoods without direct government subsidies. Affordable housing, in conclusion, is a major conundrum that requires innovative solutions, not developer giveaways at the expense of the current residents and the destruction of historic districts. So I would agree with Pete Davies, who mentioned a third option for the EIS, which is a community plan. Now, this option must have a democratically elected community task force that prepares the community plan side by side with DCP staff and elected official representatives. The option should be vetted with the NoHo SoHo community group members of the task force with the power to veto the EIS altogether unless the EIS considers the community plan. The rationale for this approach is that DCP will proceed with the build out or with action alternative stated in the scoping report in any case, but as evidenced by their disregard of community input during the envision process, which was to discuss the concept of upzoning, where none of the recommendations of the community were presented in the with action option in the EIS. In the scope.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Laura Tenenbaum and then John Sanchez.
Hi. A lot of what I was going to say has been said, and I know you've gotten my written comments. I just want to just speak briefly. First of all, I want to say that I do oppose any upzoning. I completely support as much affordable housing as we can possibly fit in within the current FAR, and have that focused on people who are of the lowest income, not in between or up at the higher end, because the way this is set up, people in the low six figures could qualify for affordable housing here. That's ridiculous. While the block I live in on SoHo has 72 rent stabilized apartments and is primarily a mixed Asian white population with tenement apartments, artist joint living work quarters, co-ops and rentals, there are also 2 high-end condos who have joint living work quarter for artist certificates of occupancy, but wouldn't know what to do with an artist if they ever saw one. Sales of those 2 penthouses in our block have twice made us statistically the most expensive street in New York City. Only a highly detailed look at our community would really show what's there. And that's what we need, a building by building analysis of who lives there. The fact of the matter is, one of those high-end apartments is occupied and owned by a person of color. It flies in the face of what everybody knows, because they don't know SoHo until they really take a good hard look. And this scoping document does not account for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. I'd just like to remind people who came along on the late side that if you wish to speak, you need to use the raise hand feature on Zoom. So we will have John Sanchez and then Rosalie Ronsky. John?
Good evening. My name is John Sanchez, and I'm the district manager of Bronx Community Board 6, a neighborhood where people make less than $24,000 a year, and a neighborhood comprised of essential workers that serve the SoHo neighborhood, delivering food, serving as caretakers, and shopping in your neighborhood. I fully endorse the SoHo NoHo rezoning plan. It should require more housing so people in my neighborhood can afford $900 rents in SoHo. Essential workers deserve the right to live in any neighborhood they choose, whether it's a wealthier neighborhood or a poorer neighborhood. This pandemic showed us that viruses don't know boundaries. What happens in one part of this city impacts another. My community board ranks in the top 10 in housing production in New York City. We cannot have 10 community boards in our city comprising nearly half of all of our housing. Every neighborhood in this city, from Riverdale to SoHo, needs to produce as much housing as possible. If more neighborhoods produce as much housing as Bronx Community Board 6, we'd have a much slighter housing crisis throughout our city. I fully endorse this plan. Bronx Community Board 6 fully endorses this plan. And as a candidate for city council, if elected, I will vote in support of this plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Rosalind Ronsky, as I said, and then Alyssa Monte. Rosalie?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I am opposed to the City Planning Board's plan, and I'm in favor of the community alternative. I think that I have been living in SoHo for over 30 years. We moved here because it was affordable for an artist to get a large studio, and it wasn't in other areas of the city that we were looking in. And I think that the City Planning Commission just assumes that there are no artists in SoHo, and there are. They pay lip service to the creative community, but they don't really support the creative community. And we have a joint living working place that is legally joint living and working place. I don't think you can count the number of C of O's and assume that that's the representative of how many artists are living in Soho. Also, I think there is not enough green space in the neighborhood. And part of the basis for whether the buildings can be built tall is that they don't encroach on natural resources. Well, there are no parks that they could encroach on. There's a part that talks about shadows that I don't think has been really looked at, because there is no green space here. And how are you going to have all these children coming into the community without green space? I raised kids here and we were always having to leave the neighborhood. Also, there's a lot of congestion from the tunnel, both traffic and emissions. And I don't see how, and I live in the historic district, I don't see how we could bear more. It is so congested.
Okay.
As it is.
Rosalie, thank you very much. That was very specific. Alyssa Monte and then Victoria.
Hello. I have been living in NoHo for over 40 years, closer to 50. So I was one of the initiators coming in to a neighborhood that was failing, that the city sort of turned its eye and attention from. Most of the small manufacturers had gone out of business. The buildings were abandoned. The pioneers moved in because it's
Oh my God.
afford to do our work. The artists came in and transformed the area with their love, care, and the little resources that they had. I think it's naive to think that to leave affordable housing once again, which we would all love to do, which was the initial history of NoHo and SoHo, was affordable housing, believe it or not. Poor people came in and lived there with no help from the city. To think that to give it to developers to foster a new wave of affordable housing in NoHo and SoHo is an absolutely ridiculous concept. And I can't believe that anyone is so delusionary that they can actually think developers will follow through. They're going to get out of it in any way they can. That's what they do. They're there for profit. They're not there to be do-gooders. It's an absurd thought. The city needs to move in, and if it really is interested in affordable housing, it should put its attention to affordable housing, leave the FAR where it is, do not destroy something that is a beautiful area that has historic interest to everyone, to tourists, to those that are there, to all of New York City. We should not destroy New York history. We should build on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Victoria and then Jane Fisher.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, this is Victoria Hillstrom. Can you hear?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Alyssa, would you please, or Lisa, would you please mute yourself?
Hi, this is Victoria Hillstrom. I very much oppose the city's plan. It seems that I am a proponent of
Victoria, would you unmute yourself, please?
I'm sorry. Hello.
There you go. Okay, you somehow you got muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Victoria Hillstrom. I am very much opposed to the city's plan. I feel that it was very ill-conceived, that there are not sufficient studies. I very much agree with Pete Davis that there need to be proper studies, building by building. From what I see, most of SoHo is rent stabilized. There are 400 lofts currently before the loft board that could be fast-tracked into rent stabilization. There's another dozen buildings unaccounted for. And I you know, I feel like I've been at a Trump rally and need to take a shower, as if these affordable housing advocates say the word affordable enough that we might actually have some affordable housing. But the fact of the matter is, this is a market driven plan with no guarantee we get a single affordable unit. And for those people that are pandering to the blacks, they must be suggesting that we would somehow initiate some discriminatory housing process, that we would rent or not rent to people based on color, which of course, if that were the circumstance, the city would have been, and the landlord would have been hauled in front of a judge so fast their head could spin. It's just silly. So that I would like to say most of all that this feels very improper during a pandemic. Everyone's life is on the line, to put people's homes on the line, people's jobs are on the line. This is not the appropriate time to be discussing rezoning, and
Thank you.
certainly not virtually.
Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you.
Jane Fisher and then Anita Isola.
Hello, thank you. I'm Jane Fisher. I'm a multi-decade resident of SoHo. Much of what I wish to say has been said, so in the interest of moving it along, I won't repeat. But I do want to go on the record with strenuous opposition to this absurd developer's plan that is being blowtorched and bulldozed on people out of the blue in a pandemic. It just defies logic. I urge everyone to take a good close look at the alternative plan that has been created by a coalition of community and civic groups downtown, which seeks to accomplish true affordable housing, which I believe that the residents of SoHo and NoHo welcome, because as was pointed out by a speaker just 2 speakers ago, it's the way most of us started out here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anita Isola and then Daniel Cohen.
Hi, this is Anita Isola. I live in Community Board 2. I have my whole life. I am very much opposed to this upzoning plan, and I do support the community alternative plan. I think this is just another developer dream. I'm not against affordable housing, but I think we could have affordable housing in new residential developments without a plan like this. This will devastate a historic area, and it will displace many, many people who are living in affordable situations now. It's totally oversized, and I totally reject it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Daniel Cohen and then Renee Monrose.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Daniel Cohen. In the 1950s, my great uncle Arthur Cohen invested in Manhattan real estate. Particularly relevant to the SoHo rezoning are buildings he invested in at 256 East 10th Street and 256 West 22nd Street, both of which are within walking distance of SoHo. My family still receives rent money from these investments, and up until now, the zoning code has protected speculators like ourselves from competition and allowed us to charge extremely high rents to hardworking New Yorkers. Unlike most New Yorkers, however, we haven't had to contribute anything of value in order to profit off of this city, and we like it that way. In fact, most of my family doesn't even live in New York anymore. All thanks to New York City's wonderful zoning code, which has blocked new buildings from competing with us. However, if the city were to legalize more housing in SoHo, then in order to compete with the newer, fancier buildings that would go up, we might have to lower our rent slightly. Wouldn't that be terrible? I'm grateful that in the past, this community board has sided with speculators like my great uncle Arthur by perpetuating bans on new housing. Please don't stop now. Please oppose the SoHo rezoning. Let us speculators make more money off of tenants by protecting us from competition. We want to continue charging as high rents as possible to hardworking New Yorkers, and allowing more competition would go against that. Please oppose the SoHo rezoning so that nearby older buildings, like the one my family profits from at 256 East 10th Street, will continue to command high rents. Thank you.
Okay, Renee and then Bobby Barnett.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, hi.
My name is Renee Monrose, and I'm an artist and have lived on Broadway between Prince and Spring for 35 years. I will be very succinct because so many people have spoken before me in a very articulate way to vehemently oppose the city's plan to upzone SoHo and NoHo. I fully support the alternative plan that was presented by the community. And I also just want to say that it has been fully debunked, the notion of MIH housing. There are studies that prove this in Chicago and LA where they tried it. And I've submitted information about that. And I don't know why the city is being so blindsided or blind to the fact that this has failed totally in other places. Anyway, thank you. And please consider the alternative plan.
Okay, thank you. I'd just like to point out that the community alternative plan is not a plan of the community board. It's a plan of a consortium of 10 or 12 community organizations, not part of the community board. Bobby Barnett and then Jean Standish.
Hello, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. So my name is Bobby Barnett. I am a lifelong New Yorker, a public servant, and I live walking distance from the proposed site for rezoning. And I wanted to echo the support that I have heard over the evening for both greater residential densities and deeper levels of housing affordability in this plan. With almost half of the city's tenants rent burdened, now is the time to push for greater numbers and levels of affordability in this rezoning. Specifically, I wanted to voice my support for adding the deep affordability option to whichever MIH set-asides are used for this project. While MIH is hardly perfect, it is very difficult to see how we can finance affordably in the absence of MIH at this time. This option would require that 20% of the residential floor area in the rezoning be affordable to residents at 40% area median income and would allow SoHo to add some badly needed low-income units in the neighborhood. This option could really use vocal community board support to ensure that it becomes a reality in this rezoning. New York City needs more housing at the deepest levels of affordability, and I hope that CB2 considers itself responsible for helping to meet this need. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you. Let's see, Jean?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, Jean, and then Giorgio Bovenzi.
I'm Jean Standish, and I'm a member of the Board of Directors of the Lower East Side Preservation Initiative, also known as LESPI. LESPI strongly opposes the mayor's plan to upzone SoHo and NoHo. If approved, this plan will allow tall buildings to be built 2.5 times larger than what is currently permitted. It would promote out-of-scale luxury condominiums, destroy the character of these neighborhoods, and set a dangerous precedent threatening neighborhoods throughout the city. While this upzoning plan is presented as a means to promote affordable housing, the specifics of the plan belie the claim. There are no provisions for explicitly middle and low income residents. Instead, the plan promises to make neighborhoods less affordable and less neighborly and hospitable. This is basically a Trojan horse for developers. I respectfully urge your committee to defend the New York City neighborhoods and oppose the SoHo NoHo Neighborhood Plan, upzoning plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Giorgio, and then Alexia Nazarian.
Hi, all. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So I am against the proposed plan for a number of reasons, most of which have been already articulated, but I will summarize them here. I think there is a high risk, probably a certainty in my view, that the plan as conceived would result in luxury and out-of-scale developments that effectively defeat the stated social purpose of affordable housing. And in particular, I would say that also the 20% of affordable housing is laughable when one will want really to pursue affordable housing as the main goal. It should be a lot higher and definitely not through the plan as proposed. The development would also alter, and in a very negative way, the fabric of the neighborhood. And the increase in population density, as several others have already noted, would put a lot of pressure on the existing infrastructure. And a couple of folks mentioned, and I totally agree with that, there is a complete lack of schools in NoHo and SoHo. And there is absolutely no mention in the plan how many schools are going to be built to basically enable so many more residents within these communities. Green space is limited, if non-existent at all. There is no identification of what they're going to do about it. And finally, as a taxpayer, I'm concerned that particularly in the middle of a pandemic, lots of efforts and resources are put forth by the city, financed by taxpayer money, to address plans that should be carefully calibrated, but they aren't, and particularly plans that do not provide the essential and important focus to identify alternatives and cost-benefit
Okay.
analysis.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you, Georgia. Alexia and then Bill Rosser. Alexia? Alexia? Okay, can we go to Bill Rosser and then Madeline Gingold? Bill Rosser. Bill Rosser? I'm not sure if we're having technical difficulties or if people are. Let's try Madeline.
Start.
Madeline?
Hello?
Hi,
Yes,
Madeline. There you
okay.
go.
Hi.
Great.
This is Madeline Gingold. I'm a painter and I came to work in SoHo in 1971. I never could have been a painter without my loft. We had affordable housing in SoHo then. It was affordable housing for artists. I am proposing that we revert to that plan. Artists have always been a racially and ethnically diverse group, and now with younger artists, more so than ever. Affordable housing for younger artists will automatically bring more racial and ethnic diversity. Artists belong in SoHo, and I hope they get top priority. A SoHo without any artists isn't any SoHo. Half the artists in America at some point were working in lofts in and around SoHo from the 60s through the 90s. The city never contributed a dime to the development of SoHo, not a dime, but look at what the artists and the galleries contributed. No other district suddenly, out of nowhere, generated such wealth for the city. It could happen again if we have an artist-centered program in SoHo for affordable housing for young artists. I'll just say it again, a SoHo without any artists isn't any SoHo. Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we circle back to Bill Rosser or?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. So I've been living in NoHo for some period now since 1986, and I'm very much supporting of affordable housing, but I think we're like kind of restricted in terms of being narrow-minded about the use of mandatory inclusionary housing, MIH. Why do we have to be restricted to that particular program? Let's be more creative and consider something totally new and have appropriate territories, buildings, and I don't care if they're next door to me or not, that are 100% affordable housing, and make that work by making it attractive to developers to build such buildings, to provide whether it's subsidies or whatever it takes necessary to make that happen. That would solve in a very effective way the need for affordable housing, which is what everybody on the call seems to want. So forget MIH, build buildings to serve the people who need them, who don't have the income to afford the market rate apartments. Give them a break. We need that. We agree with that. So get beyond the normal ideas. For example, take some of the work that's going on in Boston today. Boston is saying they're looking particularly at high density housing in certain areas of the city that would provide exactly this kind of result. And they're talking about the design of buildings, and I think professional architects do this, for units that are 450 square feet to 950 square feet. That would be the area that, makes sense and it could really work. So why don't we think about going beyond the normal scope of what we're doing and get out of the rut and provide some housing that would really be good for a broad scope of people, limited size, 100% affordable, and that would help solve our problems and restrict the heights of buildings that we all want.
Thank you, Bill. Susan Stoltz and then Julie Harrison.
Good job, Madeline. I think you got a clear to your.
Yes, I'd like to just recognize this community because this is something that we seem to be attacked on and yet it's unspoken. But I saw this, I do want to say after the pandemic in June, after 3 days of assault, which I personally, a 41-year resident, stayed on the fire escape for 3 nights, 3 days reporting fires and other things, and also recognizing many of the participants were kids that seemed to be just for the day. The next day I got out on the street. I work in documentary and I work in and interviewed all the different participants, the stores, and we found out we had that suddenly after the whole place was in really bad, I was very depressed about for the first 2 days. And then this mural project arose all over SoHo with the boards, which 2 of the younger generation had picked up and built. And we attracted both people that I recognized from the street and many people from all the boroughs, the Bronx, Bensonhurst, and they were so impressed. What we did as the community was we went out and we met people. Many people were artists. Everyone could make a mural if they wanted to. And we had the whole summer was this incredible dialogue that was about race. It was about community. And it, mainly young adults and kids, different ages that wanted, I took their pictures, but the whole community was out and they told me like they couldn't believe how friendly SoHo was as an artist community and how these were professors and teachers. And the first thing when we'd meet on the street and say, look, we need to show people who we are, because this reputation that was promoted almost from the, to me, it started when the city decided to call this luxury, the whole, and put keywords on who we were, that everybody seemed to know that all over when they came here. But what they saw was this beautiful community. And that's all
right. Thank you very much.
Julie.
Julie, yes, thank you.
Hi, can you hear me? Hi, I'm Julie Harrison. I've lived on Mercer Street below Houston since 1978. I've seen a lot of changes going on, and I've been to a lot of these meetings. I feel like we're in Groundhog Day, not just because of the numerous meetings we were invited to speak in last year about this very same issue, but all the meetings we attended a few years before that around the NYU expansion. We keep saying the same thing over and over again, and no one is listening. I know Community Board 2 did a lot of work against the NYU expansion. It went nowhere. It was, through all of the lawsuits, et cetera, NYU has this massive building they're building, and it's horrible, horrible. So that said, as you know, SoHo is already incredibly congested, not at the moment, of course, but tourists line the streets. I can barely make my way through the tourists to get home. Some of the intersections, particularly on Broadway, I've always told, I raised 2 kids in this neighborhood. They're grown and want to continue living here, but I don't know if they'll be able to. But I call the intersections the corner of hell and hell. And unless you live in this neighborhood, you have no idea. Okay, I know people say, well, this is New York. If you don't like it, leave. That's not the point. You know, that's really not, this is an historic area. It's a very special and unique area. There's no place else like it. It has influenced cities all over the world. And this SoHo has done that, and NoHo has done that. And the fact that these developers and the government that takes their money wants to change our neighborhood, just like, you know, so they can capitalize on the fact that it is this incredible neighborhood, just like NYU capitalizes on the fact that they're in a so-called village. They're in Greenwich Village, yet they will build tower after tower, glass tower after glass tower to destroy the neighborhood they capitalize on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to go back to Alexia and then Emily Hellstrom.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thanks for coming back to me. So I couldn't help but notice that the RSVP for this meeting asked whether we live in CB2. So I'm just going to say that I do not. And that actually makes me a terrific candidate to weigh in here, I think. And that's because I couldn't afford to be your neighbor. Over the years, I've lived in Crown Heights and Bed-Stuy. Living in gentrifying neighborhoods, I witnessed firsthand the pressures of displacement on my neighbors. In more than one building, my landlord aggressively harassed them. In one case, a multi-generational home, a Black family who was living in very crowded conditions, didn't have a working oven for years. I cannot tell you how painful it was to see the way these families were treated and to be responsible for it, in part by gentrifying their neighborhood. This is happening because neighborhoods like SoHo need to be destinations for people like me. I would have loved to live in your neighborhood. If neighborhoods like SoHo, Chelsea, the Upper West Side had done their part all of these years to create housing, I may not have had to gentrify Crown Heights and Bed-Stuy. So residents of Community Board 2, your choices do not only affect you, they affect everyone in the city, including the families being displaced and our neighborhood and our neighbors experiencing homelessness. So specifically, I'd like to voice my support for creating the absolute deepest levels of affordability. I know change can be scary. It's human nature to be resistant to change. And you will all be able to convince yourselves one way or another that there's too much traffic, that we're in a pandemic, or what have you. But I just want to say, please, let's not be parochial. Let's take care of each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Emily, how?
Yes, can you hear me?
Why again?
No, okay.
Yes, we can hear you, Emily.
Oh, great. Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. My name is Emily Hellstrom, and I've lived in SoHo for quite some time. I am the co-op board president of 514 Broadway and 66 Crosby Street. I'm also the vice president of the SoHo Broadway Initiative, although these views are my own. I just want to speak out tonight in favor of the community plan, which has been proposed. I believe that there could be a few tweaks. One of the plans that I worked on all summer long and for many, many, many hours at the SoHo Broadway Initiative has some few minor changes to that for retail on the Broadway corridor that I believe this community could agree upon. And I believe that the plan that the city put out has no bearing whatsoever on all of the work that this community did over the last many months. And it's a shame to me that it doesn't come out closer to that. We are hearing a lot about just wait, we don't have details, we're not sure. And it's just not fair. It's not fair to all of the people who have put a tremendous effort into coming up with ideas and ways to exist in this mixed use community. I believe deeply in affordable housing and deeply affordable housing, which is why I believe we ought to be looking at 2 Howard, which I've been saying for over 6 years now, that this is community, city-owned land that we could create deeply affordable housing. There are other alternatives that we could use, converting hotels, looking at, not just making luxury housing and this MIH, which actually doesn't actually make affordable housing. So I am very much in favor of the community plan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Calling on Ingrid Wygand and then Jacob Schmidt. And I just want to point out, we'll be down to the last 5 speakers. If there's anyone who had wanted to speak, now would be the time to raise your hand. So Ingrid and then
can
Jacob.
you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. I want to speak out against the plan as it stands, and because it's just a developer's plan and has nothing to do with the neighborhood. But and I want to speak also in support of the alternative community plan. But I want to add something that I think should be discussed, which is a live-work requirement that should be considered seriously in the SoHo NoHo context. While it is given that it would cover JLQWA occupancy, it would also cover hundreds of other independent contractor occupations. Not only writers, architects, and actors, but scented candle and soap bakers, IT workers, cake makers, coaches of one sort or another, many of which are now represented in SoHo NoHo, and many are in affinity with the culture that the alternative rezoning plan seeks to foster. Live work would also accommodate people who need affordable housing, and certainly including people of color. Black, Asian, Hispanic, and in particular Black women are trying to make their way as independent contractors, many with part-time jobs, some of them single parents, most of them making incomes that would qualify them for affordable housing. We tend to assume that the people who need affordable housing are mostly the underpaid service workers whose plight we have been made so painfully aware of by our liberal progressive media.
Ingrid?
That is true.
Ingrid, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Sorry to say that your time is up.
Okay, sorry.
No problem, but thank you very much. Jacob Schmidt and then William Thomas.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. We can.
Hey, my name is Jake. I'm a resident of New York City. I moved here 7 years ago. So I think the points in favor of the plan have been well covered by several other speakers. So I'm going to make just a bit of a meta point, I think. I'm just here to let the committee know that we see you. Nobody here seriously thinks this is a good faith debate over the best way to achieve the goal of having a vibrant city. And I don't think anybody who I know here is going to really pretend to take seriously the idea that the opponents of the plan here want affordable housing, but just think this plan is the wrong way to get it, or frankly, even that most of the opponents here are just mistaken about the effects of restricting housing production in SoHo. All right, what's going on here is pretty simple, and I'm just going to say it. A group of housing millionaires who is mostly old and white is blocking access to an extraordinarily valuable neighborhood for anyone who didn't buy an apartment here in the 70s the same way they did. This is a committee whose co-chair was caught on a hot mic earlier this year saying that, and I'm quoting here, SoHo should not be responsible for producing as much affordable housing as other neighborhoods. So you're not going to be able to thread this needle, right? You're not going to be able to vote against this plan and then pretend it's because you have a different view of how to produce affordable housing, or that you secretly support it even though you're voting against it here, because we know you just don't want it. So I hope, I'm thinking maybe we can just drop the pretense, and you can say we're a group of mostly millionaires who would like to vote ourselves some more money, please, and then we could have an honest conversation for once.
Are you finished?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. William Thomas and then Rainier Judd.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Beautiful. Hi, everyone. My name is Will Thomas. I live in the East Village, and I'm a member of Open New York, an independent, all-volunteer pro-housing organization. I just want to say that I support the city's plan insofar as it allows for more housing. SoHo and NoHo have far underbuilt housing compared to all the surrounding neighborhoods, which has consistently pushed demand to neighborhoods like the East Village, the Lower East Side, Chinatown, rising rents. Furthermore, SoHo is one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the city, where market rents could easily subsidize deeply affordable housing. This mixed income housing is badly needed, and I hope CB2 can see fit to support it. That said, I know Community Board 2 is using this testimony to inform an eventual resolution. So I wanted to step back for some big picture commentary. I testified before CB2 in 2019 when you were drafting your last resolution on SoHo, and I asked you to include affordability as a priority. And while the last resolution noted the great importance of not doing harm to SoHo and NoHo by making changes that would change the underlying character of SoHo and NoHo, there was nothing on the importance of proactively making the neighborhood more accessible and affordable, which again, I'm sure we can all agree rhetorically and hopefully really that SoHo badly needs. So finally, I just want to push back on those saying that we don't need to allow greater densities to win affordable housing in SoHo. Deeply affordable housing is far easier to build when you have a direct funding source for it, which these density boosts provide. And then the method of simply mandating affordable housing along stricter zoning has been tried in the East Village, and it came nowhere near to producing the affordable housing that some suggested it could. Lastly, keeping densities to 5 FAR is deeply unserious. Many historic buildings in SoHo are far denser. There's no reason we should hold ourselves to industrial density set forth in 1961. So I hope CB2 can give affordability the prominence it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. The last speaker is Rainier Judd.
Hi, thank you so much for letting me speak. I'm actually calling in from West Texas.
Are you there? Rainier?
Yep, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sorry. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm president of Judd Foundation. We have a cast iron building on the corner of Spring and Mercer. And I was born into the fight against Lomex. My parents, Don Judd and Julie Finch Judd, were founding members of Artists Against the Expressway. And I think the New York City has a long history of destroying community. And I think that the term affordable housing has been brought up more often than the term community, which I think is incredibly valuable to New York City. And we don't want to misstep and destroy community where it is still intact, a little bit like ancient forests that we want to keep intact. We want to keep intact the various people spoke of long-term residents with low rent. We don't want to kick anybody out of their spaces. And I particularly was touched by Elisa, Paul, Joan, Jean, Ingrid, Julie, and Bill, who are long-term residents in SoHo. So I want to just encourage you all to listen to the community members. I don't think this is a time when SoHo and NoHo should be trampled by outside interests. And just as a representative of Judd Foundation, I want to say we're open to being part of the conversation. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. I see there's one more speaker, Christopher Marte, and if this is the time to raise your hand, we'll see if we have time for people who have spoken already to speak again, but for now, let's go to Christopher.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Christopher Marte, State Committee member of the 65th Assembly District. I see this plan as a plan with no commitment. It makes no commitment to true affordable housing by allowing developers to have a loophole through the MIH program if they show financial, if they don't show financial distress or suffering caused through the development. Second, I see this a lack of commitment to actual displacement. The study says it does not have to actually do a direct displacement study. While this development is happening in Chinatown and near the Lower East Side, where there's been massive displacement for over 10 years, the city should study this. Another lack of commitment is commitment to the artists who built this community. They're not telling any artists who live in joint live work quarters on what the mechanism is or what's the timeline to understand the mechanism for them to be legal in the new zoning that this plan might propose. And fourth, it makes a lack of commitment to historic districts. If this plan goes through as it is, this would set a precedent to upzone and destroy historic districts throughout the city. Historic districts make us remember the history and the beauty of this city. And if we choose to upzone SoHo NoHo, it'll erase the history and only profit developers. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I say we have to pause this plan immediately.
Okay, thank you. Lee Benke and then Teresa Obenzi. Lee?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
No, I kind of jumped.
Okay, so my name is Lee Benke. I'm a 45-year resident of SoHo, and I've lived 30 years on the Broadway corridor. I'm going to be very brief because my internet connection is bad, but I want to speak about the effects of upzoning the retail component. We don't have an infrastructure that will support it and allow people to live in any kind of peace and harmony. So I strongly ask you to look at that aspect along with the questions of affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Teresa, and then Warren Dobney.
Hi there, this is Teresa Utheralt. I live on East 4th Street and I'm part of the East 4th Street Block Association. I have lived in New York City my entire life. I am one of those rare New Yorkers. And I find it incredibly shocking that our incompetent mayor, who can't even figure out how to open an elementary school, has decided to concoct this backdoor plan to get rid of our historic district in the middle of a dystopian pandemic, when you really would think he'd have more important priorities. Of course, he's so delusional that he thinks that if he makes a deal with these real estate developers, maybe they'll fund his next quixotic political campaign, which we all know where that's going to end. The man is completely unelectable. Look, this is a smokescreen. We're just trying to we're using affordable housing as a fig leaf to pretend that we're doing something that's important for the city, just so that we can carve out what is a valuable historical district because it's authentic to what New York really is, to make a few real estate families super rich. And I have to tell you something. I don't know if you've been following the wonderful ways that New York is looking to the world today. I mean, this past weekend, Rudy Giuliani's little escapades on C-SPAN were actually funnier than SNL. And I have to say, as a New Yorker, we think we're so excellent. But look at the garbage that we've unleashed on the world in Donald Trump and all his cronies. And it all starts in meetings like this. Every time you carve out a valuable asset that belongs to the people of New York and you sell it to a real estate developer, you are enabling the next Donald Trump. So I have to say, it's more than just destroying our historical district. It's time that we start saying no to these clandestine real estate bullies who in the end do nothing for our city. Because let's face it, all the jobs to build these silly tall buildings that are completely ugly and disgusting are for people who don't even live in the 5 boroughs.
We have no economic benefit from this, and it's absolutely repugnant, and the time is to say no to this proposal.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you. Warren Dobney, and we are asking that people only speak once. So if David Lawrence has already spoken, please lower your hand. Thank you. Warren?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So I live in Central Brooklyn, and I've lived in New York for about 10 years. I've lived in Queens and Brooklyn, and each time I've moved, part of the reason has had to do with the landlord raising the rent. And I think I speak for many people, and yeah, I'll admit, yeah, I don't live in Soho, but I think it matters to all New Yorkers that anytime any one of us is in a situation where we're trying to find a place to live that's affordable, it is just such an awful experience when you're looking around and there's so few options, so few housing options for ridiculous prices. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to be one of those people who accepts the premise that supply and demand matters. And we need to increase housing supply in this city if we want to achieve better levels of affordability. And what better place in New York City to add some of that housing supply than Soho? Soho, it's a place that is rich in residential housing, it's rich in jobs, and it's rich in transit, okay? I want to speak to what John Sanchez was talking about earlier, how like there's many essential workers who serve the residents of Soho but can't afford to live there. We should give them a chance to live in Soho, a place that is job rich and transit rich. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. It looks like Warren is the last speaker. I want to just go over what happens after tonight's meeting. Tomorrow night, the Land Use Committee will have its monthly meeting. We have one application, and following the presentation for that application, we're going to have a business session to discuss our own response to the draft scope. That is a meeting that everyone is welcome to attend, but only to watch, not to speak. It's an opportunity for the committee to discuss. We will present our resolution to the full board, which will meet on December 17th. And we'll discuss it at the full board meeting, and then it will go to city planning the following day. If you still want to say something or share your comments, you're welcome to send written testimony to hello@cb2manhattan.org. But this meeting, I believe, is over, and really we do thank everybody who spoke. We ran the gamut, and that was exactly why we wanted to have the meeting. So thank you and good night.
Thank you, Frederica.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you, Frederica.
Thank
Thank you, everyone who spoke.
Yes, thanks to the committee, and thanks to everybody who helped with our response. It really, I hope you're happy with the product.